Cheers. Jessica, cheers, prost, kampai, all the short people. It's very tough to do that. So I'm here with my good friend, Jessica Penne. She fought for the UFC strap at strawweight. She's a Invicta atomweight former champion. She is a jiu-jitsu black belt, high level, a judo brown belt under yours truly.
Woo!
And is a new teacher at Studio 540, teaching the Muay Thai on what nights?
On Wednesday night at 6 and Friday morning at 9.
Nice. So all you in the San Diego area, get in, learn your striking. I got to do that, so maybe that'll be my segue in. You're going to be really impressed by my 1, 2, 3, but not really. So yeah, I just wanted to have Jess on. I've known her for a few years now. Helped corner her for a few fights and had a good time doing it, and saw her kind of rise through the ranks and all the way to the top, really close to the top. So it's good to have you on the Flow Factory podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
Cue the music. Boom, lame music, whatever. Okay. I don't know why that's a thing, but it's a thing. So I kind of wanted to start from the beginning, maybe, as far as like your journey, so to speak, and the transformation that women's mixed martial arts has made since your beginning as an atomweight, and what you've seen as like the drastic differences that have evolved over the last 10 or so years from your perspective.
I refer to my early years in women's MMA as the dark days of women's MMA, and rightfully so. This was when I first started in MMA. There were just very little opportunities. There was no amateur opportunities like, these girls have these days. Back in my day, we had to fight professional right off the gate. It was.
There's no trial and error. You're just in there.
You're in it. And I was completely. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I just knew I wanted to do it, so I went and did it. And it was just a very eye-opening experience. But it's what's let me down this path.
So what was your motivation initially? Like, you saw like the UFC men fighting, or was it more jiu-jitsu through jiu-jitsu?
It was, I don't even know. I really do, not to get, weird or anything, but I really feel like this sport chooses you.
Okay.
Like, this is like back then, I just felt like I look back and I just see this natural progression, like this path that I was led down on. And now I'm here, over 10 years later. And, you had to do it for the love of the sport back then. I didn't even know it could be a profession. It was something I just loved to do, and it was something I was drawn to and something I had to do. And I started with jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu tournaments, and then I had, smoker Muay Thai fights, which was pretty much, the only amateur kind of experience you could get was in grappling tournaments or Muay Thai fights, or, Muay Thai loosely, but kickboxing.
Yeah.
And they were all, underground and
I'm totally picturing the Kumite at a blood sport.
Pretty much. It was pretty badass.
The streets of Orange County.
Oh my God. They would just, you would show up and they'd be like, you're a girl, same height. So fight.
They would call you the professional, but you weren't be able to make it wasn't a profession in the sense that you could make a living off of it at that point.
Absolutely not. My first MMA fight, I had 400 to show, 200 to win, 200 to finish. I got all that 800.
Hell yeah. Spent it all on dinner.
Yes, I did. But back then you really had to do it because you loved it, because we didn't know where the sport was going. We didn't know like it was going to be what it is today and actually be able to, sustain a living off of it. So back then you had a lot of girls that were crossing over to and from pro wrestling, fetish wrestling, dominatrix stuff. I'm not kidding you. Like, it was the dark
They were
days.
the most experienced of the pros, the ones that were
Yes,
in those
they
like
were.
little niches of so-called fighting.
Yes, absolutely. And still to this day, women would go to and from Japan and they would do pro wrestling stuff just to get extra experience and earn money. And it's still very popular in Japan today.
Yeah. I know like Shayna Baszler was really into that back in the day, like not just WWE, but like the pro wrestling side.
Yeah, and look at her now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's freaking amazing.
Crazy. And same with Ronda. Now WWE is like her thing. So it's kind of crazy seeing how women, there has been a place for women longer in WWE or professional wrestling than in MMA. So now, you know, it's a real fight in MMA, but I don't know if people in general, like your Joe Sixpack fan, was ready to see that, to see two women go at it.
No,
and now, like, you know, the test is up. They do. Like, it's a thing that is not leaving, where women's MMA is here to stay, and people like are able to bring their wives to watch fights now because the wives love to watch the women go at it.
Yeah,
my wife is one of them. She's like the biggest fan of you, biggest fan of Ronda. She loves the whole thing.
Well, she's also a badass judo black belt.
That's true too.
So, you know, she is into the combat sports.
Yeah.
You know, she's not shy about it. So it is really amazing to me, you know, to be walking down the street and see somebody who you wouldn't expect, you know, following the sport to recognize me or my friends, or, you know, it's kind of a crazy thing. I never thought, or, you know, you hope for it, but you never imagine that it's going to get to that point.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing time for women in the sport.
So what were some like benchmarks that you saw happening within that transition from those smokers and those underground Muay Thai, kickboxing fights and grappling, doing jiu-jitsu tournaments, to where you are today? What were your benchmarks? I know in the big picture of things, there was a few things that happened with, say, Strikeforce and that getting bought by the UFC, and the next thing you know, there's a 135-pound weight class. But for the straw weights, there was a different process. There was the Ultimate Fighter, but before that preceded that, there was Invicta, and there was even Bellator, I think, for a while had a 115-pound weight class, straw weight class. So there was a little bit more of a slower progression to get the straw weights up to where the bantamweights were.
Yeah, definitely. You had people like Gina Carano and Ronda Rousey, and you had those people that they created these weight divisions, you know, specifically for and around. And, you know, say what you want about them or about women, but like that really opened up the doorway for all of us. And we should all be thankful for it, because without them, it would have taken so much longer, or maybe it wouldn't even have happened.
Yeah.
The first organization I fought for was Hook and Shoot. And they were the only organization to really showcase women and put them on the main card, and men were on the undercard. Like, wow. It was crazy for that time. And then you had Bodog, who was the same people. Oh my God, Jeff Osborne. I'm pretty sure.
He was the head of the promotion.
He was the head of promotion. And then he went to Bodog and he started trying to push it. And then you had Fatal Femmes, who was it was an all women's organization that tried, but they just really didn't have it. And I feel that Bellator, when they had the women, I was actually part of the first female fight in Bellator. And yeah, they had 115 pounds, and it just didn't stick the way it did with the inauguration of Invicta.
Yeah.
Invicta, you had women who believe in the sport, the progression of the sport. They believed in us as athletes, and they treated us like that. And I think Invicta is when people started like really taking notice. I mean, there was Strikeforce, and, you know, they had Gina Carano, but I really just think Invicta was, you know, just right where it needed to be, and gave us the boost that we needed to, the platform to perform on. And then from there, you know, it really took off with the UFC.
Definitely. I think Invicta is a well-oiled machine, and it's a great platform to showcase the women solely and focus on them and build a star at each weight class or more, and then have them go off to the pros, so to speak, as Invicta being the minor leagues, because now it is offered on, I think, Fight Pass, and you could watch it streaming. It's not really on a channel, like a network channel, so it's hard to find unless you're like more of a hardcore fan, but it's like almost a perfect platform to get them sprungboard onto that next level. But there was nothing else for a while there, and I've had the opportunity to corner at Invicta, and it's a super tight run ship. Like, they have it going on. Like,
absolutely.
They get the ride from the airport. They got you checked in. They do all the things that the UFC does. So they're following a model, but they're doing it right. And I think that gives the women the opportunity to just worry about fighting. You know, like, it's kind of segue, or not to segue too much, but about how you went on to the Ultimate Fighter show. I think that platform to showcase fighting in general is kind of becoming more obsolete, where it's like a hard thing to see the fighters do their best in that model, where they're dealing with the drama of living in a house with different coaches, not in their comfort zone. Whereas this new Contender series, I think, is a better way to showcase those fighters, where they fly in for their fight, they bring the coaches they want, they're going to be marketed like a soul fight to be, for the world. So I think that is a more updated version in a more like social media world we live in today, where it's not like drawn out over the 3 months or whatever the time frame was for that Ultimate Fighter show. Where this Contender series, you go in for one show, one fight, and you could be a star. Like that Sean O'Malley. I mean, he did one fight. He did a crazy knockout on a guy from GFC, actually, Offo, who, it was a good fight. It was entertaining. But now look at this guy. I mean, he's smoking joints in the front row.
Okay, first of all, Nate Diaz did that first. So, sorry. No, not impressed.
Represent. Jessica is I see her wearing a Represent shirt from now to time. So she's always rocking the Diaz style.
Exactly. You got to give credit where credit's due.
True.
And Nate Diaz is the man. And Mr. O'Malley was just trying to...
Copying the trend.
He was.
He does have kind of a cool Reebok shirt, if you've seen it. It's like a tie-dye thing. I think Reebok's up their game a little bit, where they're kind of letting the athletes choose what they want, rather than this, like, it looks like almost like something thrown together off the rack. Now it's like a little bit more custom, where it's kind of cool. Being a designer, I'm a little bit more looking at that kind of stuff rather than the fighting aspect sometimes. But yeah, as my brother, who's the producer of this podcast, Jacob, he wants to at some point do like these fight night podcasts, where we're talking more about like what uniform the girl fighters should be wearing. Should it be the long trunks, or should it be the compression pants?
I completely agree with that. I do my own version of Fight Fashion Police all the time, except it usually doesn't make the cut for Two Straws because I sound way too bitchy. But you do need to dress for your body type.
That's for sure.
That's all I'm saying.
Like, I mean, like you gotta wear the like, sometimes when the girls wear like these long rash guards and then the baggy shorts, it's like, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Exactly.
Like, not only is it covering up all your attributes that are going to help you sell yourself to the mainstream, but you're also like giving up being slippery in some situations where you don't want to like get submitted, or I don't know, maybe we're getting a little rabbit hole there, but it's interesting fodder, so to speak. So
for sure. But
also, I wanted to talk about your transition from atomweight to strawweight, where you were the atomweight champion in Invicta, the inaugural, right? The first one
ever.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaking cool.
That's pretty cool. That's like something.
I never give myself credit for stuff, but
you definitely should hang your hat on that. That's a big one. And what you've had to do, because when you got the call to go on the show, there was only strawweight, so you accepted. Not only did you accept, you thrived. You were you kind of took third, so to speak, because they had that fight between Carla Esparza and Rose in the final, but you lost to Carla in a close decision, and she ended up winning the show. And your fight with her was much closer than Rose's. Rose kind of got taken apart with the wrestling side. But you transitioning from that lighter weight to the heavier weight, having to lift weights, change your meal plan, and be able to succeed at a bigger weight class is not an easy feat. So tell us a little bit about what that was all about.
I was so excited when Invicta approached me to do 105 pounds, because in the past I had been trying to do catch weights at 110, 112, just something, because I'm tall, but I'm small. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty petite. So when 105 came around, I was like, yes, this was, after the Bellator tournament, when you started seeing people cutting down from 125, where they, could fight at 135, people were cutting down so much weight. And I was like, all right, if this is the trend, I need to get on, I need to get on that trend, and I need to go where I'm going to be more successful. And that's finding out my natural weight class, which is 105. And I was approached by Sean Shelby to go to 115. I was like, no way, because I had, just had it in my mind that people are cutting so much weight. There's going to be huge girls, and I'm not strong. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to completely change my style of fighting, all of this stuff. So I was like, no way. And my contract with Invicta was up after, after one of my last fights, and my contract was up, and somebody had called me, that fought in the UFC, and they had just kind of laid it out financially for me. They're like, listen, you'd be an idiot not to try this. I'm like, I just don't know. And so I ended up making the decision, but it was too late because I had already turned it down. So I had to go audition. Wow, no. I really just shot myself in the foot.
Does that mean you have to grapple and strike and show off all that and then do an interview, the whole process? Wow.
Yeah, all of that. I had to do it. And a lot of people went to bat for me and were just like, really? You're going to make her do that? But I did it to myself. It ended up working out. I got on there. But man, that show was not for me. That's one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And I'm kind of still recovering from it.
So what were some of the things that had you rethinking your whole life while you were on the show?
I experienced the gnarliest anxiety, like craziness. I didn't know what it was either, but I was having panic attacks during the show. Wow. And they showcased some of it, just me being emotional, an emotional female, maybe she had a bad day, this, that, and the other. But fast forward to now, I now know that I was actually having like severe anxiety.
Wow.
And, depression and all that kind of stuff. And that it's a serious thing. And I didn't know what I was going through. I just knew that I wasn't feeling good. And I was constantly weak and fatigued and, really emotional. And now I know why. that
was show, there like triggers within the show, the production, the cameras, the whole fight after fight, just the drama between the fighters that they were trying to play off of?
It was just everything. Just I'm better with it now just because I know myself a lot better, but I am an introvert and I just was not like mentally, physically, emotionally prepared for that kind of environment. I had no idea what I was getting into, and as soon as I got into it, I knew it wasn't for me. But
too late.
But it's too late.
You're on.
They take your ID, they take your credit card, they take everything, and I'm the kind of person that toughs through everything. And I toughed through it.
No pun intended. It's interesting because I got the hangover. I started working with you directly after that
How fun was that?
Well, actually,
it was not.
I just thought you had resting bitch face.
I do. I do.
I didn't think it was like this whole other deeper level. I was just like, okay, I'll crack this egg. I'll be able to like warm into like be okay and have a coachable relationship, which I think we had a good time with that.
Absolutely.
And still to this day do. So I didn't see that as like a roadblock. I looked at it as, okay, how can I approach this situation and explain things in a way that's going to work for her instead of like, this is the way, because that doesn't work with a lot of people.
No, and thank God for you. Like, people don't realize that being a great coach is really difficult to do. You have to be able to coach people the way that they respond to better. And I've been all over Southern California training with some of like the top coaches, the best teams, like had the best of the best, and they could only teach one way, and I have to like just like really acknowledge and appreciate the fact that like you can really figure out what you need to do to bring the best out of somebody. And that's just a God-given talent.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot. Seriously. I mean, I'm not.
No, thank you.
I agree. No, I don't have all the answers. It's just something that I feel like we could work towards a solution to a problem rather than I have the answer at this very moment and this is what you need to do, because that's very one-sided. So a lot of times like we'd run into an issue, whether it's like at sparring or during technique days, and then I'd go home and think about it, and I would ponder about like, okay, what's the way to approach this next time, and we could get to the problem, if not even a problem, but just get a solution to what is deficient. So I think you came a long way as far as like the stuff that I could show you, the like wrestling, judo, jitsu. But as far as like range and distance and your striking side, you had some great coaches, Jason Perillo, Eric Del Fiero. You kind of have a good backbone of support where you learned great fundamentals and distance and understanding of movement. So you have all the tools. So it's just being able to tap into those things and execute on game day or during training camp in the right way at the right speed rather than going too hard. Because I remember a lot of times, you're driving to your Ralphing, and then the next thing you know, you're driving to strength conditioning, and then you're driving down to training for striking, and then you're driving up to me. It's like, you're spending 8 hours a day in the car. So sometimes
as many hours as I was training is as many hours as I was driving to training.
Mm-hmm.
That's exhausting.
Oh, totally.
But it was just, again, I toughed through things. I don't even realize how it is until I look back, and I've finally gotten those changes that I needed, and I look back, I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Like, that was crazy. But you just, you got to do what you got to do.
It's a work in process. So you progress. You're able to evolve. Now that you've made some of those mistakes, if you want to call them mistakes, but you're able to learn from them, and now you're heading into the future of your career, and you're going to be able to use all those things to your.
And I have to say, even though The Ultimate Fighter was an extremely difficult thing to be involved in, it was one of the best opportunities, that had ever come along in my career. So I had to take it. And even though it was extremely difficult to get through, and I mean, you met me at a really difficult point in my life, and I'm constantly experiencing all of these things, and I'm not knowing what it is, but I'm just trying to tough through everything.
Yeah.
And finally coming out and like realizing what it is and what I have to do and all that kind of stuff. That's, even though it was hell, like, I'm glad it happened. It had to happen. Mm-hmm. It absolutely had to happen. Otherwise I'd still be in the same place.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you can't have like
things.
The sweet without the sour. So you've had to experience those road bumps and roadblocks to be able to be like, oh, I'm glad I figured those out, and now I can move forward and be able to conquer, so to speak. So I think I'm glad you're in a good place now, and you've kind of figured those things out, and you're able to look to the future rather than, oh, I coulda, shoulda, woulda at that time. Now you're all bummed out about what could have been rather than what lies ahead. And that's more important than anything. I mean, you have a career in front of you. You're also part of a team on UFC Tonight. Is that the show? That's
UFC Now.
UFC Now, I'm sorry. So Jessica is actually a pundit or a guest pro fighter that comes onto the show and is able to contribute her perspective on different various subject matters. So watch it. Is it on the app?
It's on
Fight Pass. Fight Pass, cool.
Fight Pass. It's called UFC Now. And yeah, it's funny being such an introvert and like having all these insecurities. I never thought that I would, really want to be in front of a camera. I always thought, I'd rather hide in the corner. And
it's funny seeing you take selfies with Karen Bryan and Michael Bisping and all on the set.
I love it. It's so much fun. And I love this sport so much. It's given me so much. I mean, it's caused me to grow and just like keep, shedding all of these layers and all of these restrictions that I put on myself, that I love it and appreciate it so much. I can't imagine not being attached to it in some way, shape, or form. It's been such a positive influence in my life. I've met amazing people through it. I've had, once in a lifetime experiences. So I want to get back to it. I want to be attached to it, in some way. And so getting into that, and then with my teammate Angela Hill, we've created Two Straws, and it's just
talk a little bit more about the new podcast.
So it's a YouTube channel, and it has been in the works for over a year. We've talked about this. We've made plans. What's that meme going around? You're not good friends unless you plan at least one business together. And we've been planning this for over a year, and finally her manager Brian Butler was like, during her last fight week in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, he's like, when are you guys gonna do this? So we had a little business meeting while we were there for fight week, and we came home and we just got to it, and it's a lot of fun. We basically just try and have fun and make fun of MMA. Like, there's a bunch of like crazy lunatics and like
totally
crazy stuff that always happens in mixed martial arts, and why not have fun and make fun of it, and have a couple drinks in the process.
Yeah, that's the funnest part of it, right? But it's cool hearing that inside perspective and that kind of like inside baseball where information that a lot of people are interested in, and that gets people to tune in and be able to get interested in the fact that, okay, I could hear about the cool gossip or about what's going on in at the gym, at wherever, that you might know more information on, and it gets people kind of, their fix. Because everyone has a place where they're a fan of not just of MMA, but of any sport, where they want to know what's going on in the background. Sure, the entertainment side of what's on TV is like the best thing, the forefront, what people really
Absolutely.
are entertained by. But at a certain point, you want to dig a little deeper and understand like what goes on in the background. So that's cool. You guys are doing that. And Angela, being your teammate at Alliance MMA and your training partner in the same weight class as you guys started a podcast together. That must be like an interesting dynamic, being teammates in the same weight class, both ranked in the top 10, having like knowing each other so well. A lot of times as a coach, I see people in the same weight class in judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, have a hard time dealing with that, where they feel threatened and they're keeping score and they're trying to get their coach on to their side rather than their side, and it becomes a big kind of dramatic mess. Where you guys have been able, not only you guys, but also Beck Rawlings was a strawweight and actually moved up, but you guys as a whole were on the show together and then all relocated to Alliance MMA and now thrive as teammates and get each other better and are able to use each other for a positive training like scenario, rather than become catty and have it filled with drama and have it worse. The whole thing. That's the hard thing.
Sounds a little sexist.
I was talking about guys that I'm like I know guys that are in the same weight class and that they're training on the opposite sides of the room. They can't even have a conversation about anything because they're too protective, and they think the person's biding their time until they attack. So it's a weird scenario, but you guys have handled it really well.
And it's funny that you talk about the cattiness and this, that, and the other, because my first experience with a female training partner at my first gym ever, it was like that. And I felt that she was always like, I was the newbie. So I looked up to her kind of like a bigger sister. And she would always like let me know my place by like beating me up. And I'm smaller. I mean, when I came into the sport, I was 112 pounds. I was just like skin and bone. I was just like this flexible little Gumby thing. Like, and I mean, I still am, but a little bit bigger, a little bit more muscly. But I just had a really bad taste in my mouth, and it kind of blocked me from training with females. And not that there were a lot of females to train with back in my day, but I was really turned off from it until being on The Ultimate Fighter. And it was crazy because I saw this, we're in this competitive, just like blender of just craziness. And it was crazy and awesome at the same time, because I was finally around females that were like-minded. And even though we're competing with each other, like I finally understood like the girl power thing, like the women empowering women thing, because we were all going for the same thing and we all understood each other and we all supported each other. Of course, we want to win over this person or that person. It's still a competition. But I finally got it. It finally clicked to me that women are like, we should be like rallying together and supporting each other. And after the show, I realized how important it is to have female training partners. And on the show, it was really difficult because you're watching your back, and these aren't really your
teammates. Even Team Melendez, Team Pettis. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and everybody's out for themselves.
Yeah.
But there was this like kind of air that I started thinking about. So I had talked to Beck. I'd been invited down to train at Alliance, and Beck was the first female there, so she brought us down. I'm like, okay, cool. But I never felt like that from her. Of course, we were competitive and we wanted to win in training, but it was helping us get better because, she's more of a striker. I was more of a grappler, and we just started helping each other. And then when Angela came, again, there is kind of like you're competitive with each other, but then once you let that down and you realize that you're there to help each other grow and fill in the blanks that each one of us is missing, each deficit the other person can fill. And it became a really awesome thing. And then we have an awesome women's team, and I never thought I would be a part of that.
Yeah, you got Kat Zingano down there.
We have Cal Schwartz.
Cal Schwartz,
we
115.
have Paulina Granados. We have Lauren Mueller. We have some really awesome chicks.
For sure. And
It's
iron
really awesome.
sharpens iron, where
It
you're
does.
not just training with a lightweight guy like a Wilson Hayes, who's the lightest guy on the team probably at Alliance, but he fought for the belt too. He's like an amazing grappler.
Who
and
is
fighter.
huge.
Yeah, he's a $160 on a light day. But yeah, so you actually get to train with people that it's going to be like once on game day when the cage door locks. You're actually in there training with someone where 5 years ago you didn't, maybe even more, about 5 years ago you didn't have those opportunities, because it's like, who's the lightest guy, who's the kid in high school that is going to outgrow me in 2 years.
I had mostly like junior high, like boy wrestling team training partners at Rain. Like those are my training partners, and then they leave for a summer, come back, and I'll be like, "You're
150 now."
I'm like,
You got a beard.
"Get out of here." They're like, "No, let's go." I'm like, "No."
For all those times you armbarred me.
Exactly. I'm like, no, we're good. You go with somebody your own size.
Yeah, one of the wrestlers that I trained throughout high school, Chase Zolman, who's a high school All-American wrestler. I started working with him in 8th grade. 95 pounds on a heavy day.
Yeah.
Now he's 150. So Jessica got the opportunity this freshman and sophomore year to see the transition happen, where he went from 95 pounds soaking wet to 130 with a beard and a deep voice.
Like, get off of me.
It's like, easy guy.
He's like, no, it's my turn now. I'm like, no, you're going to
Yeah.
break me. Stop.
Totally.
Just stop.
Yeah, I think you were the first person to put him in a triangle, and he is probably like, in some area of his brain was like, ooh, but in other areas it's like, what is going on? I'm about to pass out. But
Oh my
yeah,
God.
so it's interesting seeing like probably the people that run through your weight range, that the next thing you know, they're 200 pounds 5 years later. It's like, okay, I used to beat you up.
Yeah, no, it's very sad. It makes me very sad every time. They used to be like under my chin, and now I'm looking up to them, and they want to wrestle and like, get retaliation for when I was stronger than them and better than them. And it's just, it's very sad.
Well, I mean, it's good that you have the foundation of a good team to kind of settle you, and put those like things at ease. Who am I going to train with? Where do I have to drive? Yeah, it's all under one roof.
And that's the thing. I used to show up at Rain, and I love Mark Munoz. I think that was like some of like the best training I've had, and I learned so much from him.
He's a great coach. Like, his
He
wrestling is amazing.
Amazing person, amazing coach. Nobody mixes it up for MMA with wrestling to striking and grappling like Mark Munoz. He is amazing. And I still hold a lot of those like little tidbits and learning abilities and skills with me to this day. And I'll always...
He's like a gentle giant too,
He
like
is.
soft-spoken.
I used to grapple with him.
Yeah.
I used to grapple with that
Totally.
guy. He's like upwards of 200 pounds.
He
and
might
I
be
used to grapple.
the only guy I've ever wrestled with that is sweatier than me.
He's very sweaty.
Yeah, very
He's
sweaty.
a very sweaty human.
We say this lovingly, Mark. If you ever get the opportunity to listen to the Flow Factory podcast.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So at all the gyms you've been to, King's MMA, Ruka Sport, Jason Perillo, all these places you've been that you've been able to learn under, some of the best coaches
Did you
there.
just drink the last of the beer, dude?
I'm going to share. We're going to
Are
share.
you? Are
well,
you?
you're nursing over there. You're a little
I have to
wounded.
use the restroom. I'm just,
So the Contender Series, like I brought up earlier, is kind of this new platform where they're trying to build stars. Kind of like that show that Dana White was on that you were on, where you went to some haunted house, but the show was like
looking for a fight,
which I really liked that show. I was like, Shirley and I would sit down with the popcorn and a beer and watch it. But I like these kind of new ways and strategies the UFC is trying to build, a star up, and they're looking for the best fighter to do so. This Contender Series is one of them, and a fighter that just got signed to this Contender Series is Nick Newell, and he has, I think his left arm is missing from the bicep down. So I think he fights like at 145 pounds, and he is only losses to Justin Gaethje. So he is actually pretty damn successful. So he's 155. So he's pretty successful. And I wonder what your thoughts are on, he's disabled and he's fighting at the highest level there is in the sport of MMA, where, there's cerebral hemorrhaging, there's the chance of being, all these things where you could get injured and there's this new CTE thing where, these are things you can't come back from. And a guy going into the cage with one arm is kind of, a hot button issue where is that something that you're against or that you have any feelings towards?
Nick Newell's a friend of mine,
Oh.
and I'm rooting for him.
Totally.
He petitioned the crap out of it, and he finally got his shot. He's going on the Contender Series, and I think he should. If you've seen any of his fights, he uses what he has to his advantage.
Definitely.
He knows how to use like what he has and work with it. I think it's awesome. I think that, you know, anybody who's willing and able as he is should have the same opportunities. And I fully support it.
Yeah, he's totally optimized his God-given body and how he is able to adapt a style to be able to win at pretty high level. I mean, this World Series of Fighting promotion there's real legit professional fighters that he has walked through a division and only had one loss to probably, I think Justin Gaethje's a top 5 155 pounder.
Justin Gaethje's a badass.
Badass motherfucker. This guy fights to the death, and he'll fall down and get knocked out and get back up and try and fight the ref.
I do worry about his longevity.
For sure.
He's a young man. There are certain styles of fighting that just do not have longevity.
No, yeah.
And he is more offense than defense.
Yeah.
So it is, time will tell. But he's a tough fight, and to have a loss against someone like that, I think is, I don't think it speaks ill of you.
No, definitely. I think Justin Gaethje, to go back on him, he definitely appeals to like a simpler side of the brain, where if you're watching as just a fan, you're just like, yes, the best ever. Let's keep doing this forever. All other fighters are dumb because they're not entertaining. And Justin Gaethje, the way he goes at it, head first, hands first. He's a D1 All-American wrestler, but you don't really ever get to see that because he doesn't showcase that side of his style. And I know we were talking about Nick Newell, but we're talking about Justin Gaethje now. I think he is a dying breed because now that MMA is really sportified and people are looking at these rankings where, if I just move up into the top 10, I'm going to make X amount of dollars and I'm going to be able to support my family. And I get all that. And it's the sports side of things where people play rules and they want to win 2 rounds against 1 and win the decision. Justin Gaethje don't care about any of that. He's going
a fighter.
He's going for the kill. He's a fighter.
That's a fighter.
People don't understand the difference when people
there's a huge difference.
Clarify that difference. Like, I'm a fighter. I'm not in this sport. It's not like a GSP versus like a Jorge Masvidal. Someone like a guy like Jorge Masvidal took I think 3 losses in a row where he was going for the kill the whole time and the other guy was backing up the whole time, but he lost those fights. Whereas a GSP will be that guy who's backing up the whole time, and maybe at the end of the round, he'll do like the analytics in his head and shoot that double, take you down, be on top, and win that round and steal it. So I think that goes a lot with the styles of MMA and how people kind of perform with their coaches. And it's a chess match, yes, but it's also like a fight. And someone like Justin Gaethje don't care about winning 2-1 rounds or 3 out of 5 rounds. It's because everyone wants to see him in that kind of blood sport. And it's entertaining. I mean, just like I like watching your Brock Lesnar's, the kind of like the freak shows. It's entertaining. It's not like a sport. As a coach, it's like it's really difficult to be able to look at that and, okay, so they did this, and this wrong. No, they're out there to kill,
Some people are just going to go.
Yeah.
And that is something that really, like we were talking about, what makes the difference between being a good coach or just, a trainer, really.
Yeah.
Is that they recognize what you have, what you bring to the table, and then they help you be your best that you can be. And I think that like really differentiates like coaches from trainers.
Yeah.
And to be a good coach, you have to be able to look at that person, just like, Nick Newell's coach, and really cultivate him to use what he has and his assets to the best of his ability.
Do you know what camp he's at?
Nick Newell? I don't.
Yeah. I wonder what his coaches are like pressing upon him and having him train and be able to get him to the level he's been at, So I don't know enough about him, but I just know that kind of hot button issue where the guy has one arm and he's fighting at the highest level. Is it safe? For the layman, they don't know.
There's only one way to find out.
For sure. Yeah. No.
Put them in there.
Put them in there.
You're either going to sink or swim.
Yeah. Let the chips fall where they may.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. Like having these fighters who have that deficiency come in there. I think there was another one too. Kyle Maynard. I'm not sure. I think he didn't have arms or legs.
I remember hearing about
Yeah,
this.
yeah. He wrestled in, I just remember because I lived up in the Bay Area for a while, and one of my roommates was teammates in high school with this guy from Georgia. And he wrestled in high school, and I don't think he was very successful, but he, toughed it out. And then he started, I remember I was at Henzo Grace's in New York, training their no-gi Wednesday noon class, which is like all the killers, and he was there. And he, just at the knees and at the elbows, and he was training to be a professional fighter. And I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you could Google him, and he lived the whole life as a fighter without any arms or legs, just no like extremities. That's pretty crazy, being able to like put yourself out there on that level.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
It's not something that a lot of people can do, but I think that in itself, I think it's inspirational.
Yeah.
A lot of people, if we're looking at it honestly, like, will he have longevity? No, but at the same time, he's fulfilling his dream. He's driven, and he's doing it.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many people, that just are just so like content with sitting back and judging and not doing what they dream of doing or aspiring to be, and it's just so easy to point their finger at people.
For sure, those armchair quarterbacks, yeah.
And I think it's really inspirational. I think that's inspiring, and
Yeah.
I think that people can really learn a lot from somebody like him, somebody who is born or has a disadvantage, like whatever it may be, and just to go out there and put it all out there despite what people may say or think. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's inspiring.
For sure, man. And like the grappling side of that, because that's what I relate to. I think on some level that's what you relate to. Like these fighters where I know you're a high level striker, but your jiu-jitsu game, judo game, wrestling game is at such a high level where I know like this Kyle Maynard, having no extremities at that level, was training a ton of sweeps from the bottom because, he's getting under people and pulling guard and being able to go deep half and end up on top and hold top position. And I was watching him train it once, and I'm like, that's pretty amazing. Like the balance and the leverage is so short, whereas in jiu-jitsu, like someone like you got tall, like long arms, long legs, and you're able to use that leverage, and you're really flexible, and you're able to get people. I remember one time I was 3 feet away. You ended up in a scramble with Randa Marcos. It was the tough finale. Mm-hmm, and you ended up in a scramble, and I think for a second you were actually mounted. And you brought both feet, I think you like kind of oopad, like that like pop of the hip, and then you brought both feet up from the bottom being mounted, and you put them in front of her chest, and you were able to roll over and sweep her from like, it's one of those things that I've tried it. Everyone's tried it. Like, okay, I'm going to throw my feet up being mounted and see what happens. And it never works. I mean, not for anyone that's just out there, but you were able to do it at the highest level, and you would have to see it and go back to that fight and watch it.
No, I do that all the time.
It's crazy.
Like I do, but she was so stiff that it actually she didn't move the way I normally move people. So it was kind of this really unique thing that we did where we just kind of like turned over. But normally I will actually, like, I'm comfortable enough to give up the mount because people want to go to mount. Yeah. That's a dominant position, but I'll give it to them and I'll escape out the back. I usually, push them up, oompa up, put my feet, replace my hands, and I push out the back and I end up in a good position. Creates a scramble. But yeah, Randa Marcos is very, very strong. She's one of those like super solid 115ers, very, very dense girl. She's very strong. And, yeah, just the way her body moves, she didn't move like, a normal person would. And yeah, those are the adjustments sometimes you have to make in a fight. You never know what you're really getting into until you get in there, until you like put your hands on somebody and, feel them out. But yeah, that was kind of a unique situation because I do that move all the time. That's one of my things that I've done since I first stepped on the mat. I don't know, my body wanted to do that move, so I always did it.
No, it was interesting because I thought we were in trouble. I thought like, okay, like we're gonna have to do a lot of work here to like get to like a quarter guard and then fight for a single, and then all of a sudden you're on top. And it was kind of like, whoa, okay, I didn't even know that existed within you, because we were still, I was still like kind of new working with you.
Yeah.
But I remember I was talking to some journalist after, I think it was John Morgan or somebody who covers the sport, and he knew all about that sweep, and he was telling me about it, and I'm like acting like, oh yeah. She does this all the time in training, and I'm like, I have no idea what's really happening there. I thought we were about to get pounded, but no, you ended up being on top, winning the round, winning the fight. And you know, your jiu-jitsu game, I got the pleasure of rolling with you. I think, was it yesterday?
Yeah.
I think you called me
Wednesday.
a bully. You called me a bully.
Yeah, you did some strongman shit, but
Okay.
whatever, hurt my feelings a little bit.
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
I understand.
But you have a very developed and intricate game off your back. Like your guard game is very high level, and being able to not only look for sweeps, but you're looking for submissions, you're looking for leg locks, you're looking for triangles, arm bars. So, you know, it goes through waves with MMA. I think like what's trending sometimes now was taboo a year ago. And I think nowadays, you know, with the leg locks being so in fad and in vogue, where like all these, the Danaher Death Squad and all these like grapplers are giving up position to be able to get the submission, rather than that like old school jiu-jitsu mentality where it's like, I'm going to be on top, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to solidify position.
Before submission.
That cliche, you know. I don't really jive with that as much because I like to flow, but you're able to like feel so comfortable off your back and then get the high guard and use all these positions. Where did you develop that game, and how did that come about?
Well, ever since I first stepped on the mat, I had really large male training partners. Back in my day, we didn't have female training partners. I was very limited to who I had to work with. So I was this, you know, skinny, flexible little thing. And I just kind of took to it like a fish to water. Like I just started using my body to my advantage and not even really knowing what I was doing, but just trying to use it to the best of my ability. So I'd have these big dudes that were shooting doubles on me. So I just got used to being put on my back. I'm like, okay, you want to go there? We'll go there. I'm going to try and, you know, attack off of the takedown and just try and create scrambles. I've competed in BJJ and Oogie and all that kind of stuff, but I have always had an MMA mentality, and that is attack. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I do like, you know, position and, you know, landing strikes and stuff like that. But in MMA, as opposed to like sport BJJ, like there's, you know, you don't get points.
There's no repercussions either for...
There's no nothing.
Yeah.
So and again, like sometimes I wouldn't do well in BJJ competitions because I was giving up position and like losing on points and just going for the kill. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get it, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd come out on top and sometimes I wouldn't. But sport BJJ was more of a way to get experience and like practice and have fun. And I never really actually trained, like did a BJJ camp. It was always like, yeah, I'll do that. Whatever. Cool. Let's go. And I never really kept score. And so it was fun for me. But by the time I got into brown belt, I started seeing like this huge gap of competition, because these are people that are eating, breathing, sleeping jiu-jitsu like 2-3 times a day, and I'm only training it a few times a week. And I love jiu-jitsu, but I could no longer give it the respect that it deserved to be a high-level sport player.
Yeah.
So my jiu-jitsu has always been more no-gi MMA based, and all of the stuff that you see is just like me being used to being the smaller, weaker person on the mat. So I just adapted my style to that. And going into the strawweight division, I really put a roadblock like mentally in my head. I was like, wow, I'm not going to be able to fight the same way. And it's definitely hindered me, because I kind of felt like I had to change my style and do this and do that, because I'm coming up from 105. People are cutting down from 125, 135. That's a huge gap. And I mean, you know, you see men that were fighting up at 155 and now they're 125ers, like, and like Benavidez, like Ortiz, like, you know, so many people that as soon as the UFC, you know, integrated those weight classes, now
People moved around.
People moving around.
Yeah.
People are still moving around. You have Frankie Edgar, who is the 155
Could
champion.
be a 135er.
Now talking about 135.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. But for me, I've never been like a strong, like muscly type person. I've always been more fluid and flexible.
Use what your attributes are, and that's you. You're like a slinky more than like a
Yeah.
hammer and a nail, where you're the hammer and nailing the nail. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I really do realize that I put a lot of restrictions on myself, like mentally. When I went up to 115, I was like, wow, I don't want to be put in that position. I don't want to be put in that position. So I've like kind of eliminated half my game.
Close the self off. Okay.
Yeah. So now being able to train with females, being at Alliance, a place that's like really encouraging me to like go back, you know, and get back to myself and, you know, try and get better at what I'm good at and, you know, fill the gaps and all that kind of stuff. I'm feeling a lot more confident that, you know, I can get back to being me.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty, I'm sure it's cool having such leaders like Dominic Cruz in the room and leading training, and Eric Del Fiore as the head coach, being at such a established fight camp, that you almost can let go a little bit of the insecurities and be able to be like, okay, everything's provided for me here. I'm going to be able to train with these girls, and I'm going to be led by these leaders that are champions, and you being a champion yourself too. So it probably puts a lot of things to ease rather than before driving around.
Yes and no, because again, I'm a little neurotic.
You'll find a problem with anything, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, I knew that Alliance is where I need to be to grow and what I need, but it has not been easy because, again, I'm my own worst enemy. I think a lot of fighters are fighting something, and I'm definitely like, not just, you know, I don't mean just inside the cage, like I mean outside the cage, and I'm constantly, you know, battling myself. So it has been difficult, but I'm definitely trying. And I mean, just today, you know, I had Dominic Cruz coaching me in wrestling, and I'm like, how freaking cool is that?
That's
Dominic
rad.
Cruz is coaching me and giving me, you know, good feedback and encouragement. And like, honestly, I've never been in a gym like this, and I've been in some amazing gyms. And what separates Alliance from any other place that I've been to is like, we're a family. And like, we really, really, really want people to like succeed and grow and support. And I've never experienced that before. Like, I've been at some awesome gyms, and, you know, I you know, have these training partners for years, and yeah, they're my family, but this gym is just, it's one of a kind to me. It really separates itself because everybody is so tight and so close, and it's not cliquey the way certain places are. You know, everybody just kind of clicks off, and you know, these people go with these people and this people. But like, you know, we get, you know, we spend holidays together. We sweat with each other. We cry with each other. We celebrate with each other. Like, it is a really amazing support system. And, you know, whatever resistance that, you know, I can come up with in my crazy mind,
You'll figure out a way to put roadblocks in front of yourself.
Exactly. And there they are, just like breaking them down, like, hey, knock it off.
So what are some of these roadblocks that you have found that you've had to like hurdle?
So ever since being on The Ultimate Fighter, I, you know, showed up at Alliance, and I'm like, hey, I'm here. We're going to train. Nobody knew me. You know, before I had like my longtime training partners, I had Mark Munoz, my coach, and Jason Perillo. Like, I had all these people that knew me and just kind of knew how to deal with me. And coming out of The Ultimate Fighter, like having this like crazy anxiety and depression, nobody knew how to deal with me. But Eric, he was like, you know what? Like, this, like, after a few fights, I was having crazy panic attacks during sparring. Like, I literally could not spar for my title fight. I could not spar for the fight after that. Like,
no, I remember. I was there for a few of those.
You poor guy.
Oh my God.
Poor guy. Everybody was like, what is this? We got a broken horse. Send her back. Send her out.
I was reevaluating some things on those drives home. I was like, okay, so I said one thing, got yelled at. I said another thing, and I know nothing. And then I said one more thing, and then she's like, cut the tape off my gloves. I got to get out of here. I was like, okay.
Listen, it was like I met all of these people like
on the fly.
Yeah, and it was during like the most difficult time of my life.
Yeah.
Like it was really difficult. I had no idea what was wrong with me, and I didn't even know like anything was wrong with me. I just thought I was crazy. But I come into this gym and they're like, "All right." They try a few things, and then like Eric would not give up on me. He wouldn't accept like how I was acting and like what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single day was normal. And so he sent me to get help. And we finally, like, I was finally in the right place, and I was in the right time and all that kind of stuff to kind of like figure out what exactly was going on.
Pinpoint it.
Exactly.
Yeah, rather than run from it and try and just, everything's fine. Everyone says everything's fine.
Exactly.
I'm fighting for the title, so everything's fine, right?
Yeah, no, nothing was fine.
Yeah.
Nothing about like the past like few years was fine. But like through all of that, like I learned and I grew, and now I'm fine. Fine-ish.
Fine-ish.
We're getting there. But like to meet me and just have like these automatic like walls come up, like that was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like how fun is that? So getting into there and just feeling like they like accepted me like crazy and all, and with all of these problems and all of these barriers, and just like would not let me like get away with it.
Yeah.
But not say like, okay, you're wrong, you can act like this. They were like, okay, well, like let's figure this out. And I was finally in a place where I felt safe enough to like let down my walls and just really like accept help. And yeah, it was finally happened, and it's crazy.
Well, it's cool that you found a home, and Alliance MMA is a very diverse group of people. You got Phil Davis, you got Wilson Hayes, you have all these people that come from different origins and meet together to get the best out of each other. And the few times I have been there, I've seen the way the warm-ups run and how everyone integrates on sparring day or on just normal grappling day, training wrestling day. And it's interesting to see how many different people can come together and have the same goal to get better on that day, to train properly, not trying to hurt each other. And it does help that you guys got new mats and a new facility and all that, like to be able to optimize your training. Because I remember the first few times I was down there, I'm like, these are the mats you guys are wrestling on.
Oh no, we're back on those mats.
Oh no, really? Oh no.
We were doing takedowns all day, and I'm like,
oh, wow. They're like basically puzzle piece mats.
They're like less than an inch thick. Like they're rough. But I've been in some, really amazing fancy gyms with, all these bells and whistles.
Studio 540 being one of them. It's rad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Once
like
you've been in there, you're like, I'm never going back.
Yeah, it's like a boutique. There's like a $6,000 surfboards on the wall. And
yeah, I still don't know why the men have a nicer bathroom than the women.
Rob's always talking about.
We need to talk to Rob. No,
he's going to upgrade at some point.
Now that I'm there, we need to crack the whip.
We'll start
on
calling
that
the shots, dude. You're the new star teacher, so you gotta say, hey, I need this, and this. Become a prima donna. Like,
oh
hey,
my God.
It's the right place to do it. Like, because they're always asking, like, hey, what do you think we could do to make this better? I'm like, hey,
well,
let's get sprung load
here.
mats. Let's get this. Let's get that. And hey, sprung load mats are there.
That's for a saltwater fish tank wall. We really need that.
Yeah. I'll go for a sauna. There's a couple things that, like, hey, I would really be like, nice if there's a cold dip.
Be opposed to that.
A cold dip, a sauna.
Let's turn this into a mini, like, OTC.
For sure.
Right?
It could be. I think that's one of the things that, like, Rob has planned, but I think we're talking about Studio 540 here. It's the gym we both teach at, and it's a great place. So if you don't know about it, go on Instagram, look at it. It's like pristine. It's like the locker room for the guys is like where it would put the Lakers, the Los Angeles Lakers locker room is about equivalent. We have actually, was that Staples? Is that where the Lakers play? Staples?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've seen the Lakers locker room. It's like on an equal level. So it's a high level, like, sanctuary for grapplers, and Jessica's teaching there now. So if you're in the area, please go. And where else are you teaching?
Up at Carlsbad, Gracie Ba. I do beginner striking on Monday and Thursday, 7 to 8 p.m.
Cool. And is there anything else you want to plug, like the Two Straws podcast?
Two Straws.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can check us out on our YouTube channel. It's Two Straws, and I just have a lot of fun with my friend and training partner, Angela Hill, and
Cool.
it's pretty awesome.
Nice. And hopefully we get to see you back in the octagon fighting soon here. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I'm targeting for September, so it's still a little bit far out to get all of the logistics, but that's my target month for return, and I'm very excited about it.
Cool. So until then, hopefully I'll be helping you with your judo takedowns and
Yes,
be able
sir,
to
you
kind
know
of
it.
do some of that stuff. So cool. Is there anything else that you could think of that you might want to just rap about, or?
No, not really. I think you could next time maybe stock up on the beers a little bit more.
I know.
I didn't know we were in a chugging race.
I bought a 6-pack. I gave Jacob one, Jess one, and the rest down the hatch.
Yeah, usually on my Two Straws episodes, I have my own bottle of wine, and Angela has her own bottle of booze, and
Okay, so for sure next time I'll get you your own bottle of wine. So it won't be like,
you.
okay, these beers are for me. Here's a swig for you. I had to wet my whistle. I had a private right before this, and I sweat.
Oh, carbs, you got to recover.
Yeah, I sweat buckets too. So I was recovering with this cold 805 Racer beer. So cool. Well, hopefully you'll come back soon, and it was great to talk to you, Jess.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You rule, and thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you.
Oh yeah, and before we close up shop, follow us on YouTube and Instagram. My Instagram, which is jflow1979, will have all the links to be able to go on the iTunes account and on the SoundCloud account, so you could listen to it, or you could watch this feed where Jess and I talk a bunch of shit. Okay, cool. Take it easy.